I'm Mark Lawson, president of the ECS Publishing Group, and I am joined by Sid Davis, who is the Director of Music and Fine Arts at St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Houston, Texas. And we are going to visit a bit about what musicians are facing as we move into this post-pandemic world. So welcome, Sid.
Hey, Mark. Glad to be here.
For those that don't know much about St. Luke's United Methodist Church, just give us a little snapshot of the program there and kind of what all you do.
It is a pretty vital program, thanks to a lot of people who make me look good. We have choirs for children, youth, adults, handbell choirs, singing choirs. We are, I guess, a little bit different in that many, many years ago, one of the pastors of the church built a theater here in the church. So we have a theater program because you can't really have a theater in the church. It's like having a pipe organ and not having a really fine organist. So we have a theater program. We have a fine arts academy where people can come and take private lessons, piano, voice, flute, guitar, that sort of thing. We're pretty lucky to be well-rounded, but again, we have a really great team of people who just work very, very hard and make me look great.
So kind of describe a little bit about what happened when the pandemic hit in your church and kind of how long did it take to kind of pivot into doing things virtually, and what did you experience a little?
Well, we were very, very fortunate in that we have two colleagues that work in the music and fine arts department who are, one is very, very gifted with audio, and one had just taken a video production course. And so he was able to piece together our video for our virtual choirs. So we could do fairly rapidly virtual choir stuff, which, as you know, the world kind of thinks you just turn Zoom on and everybody sings. And it's a little more complicated than that. So we worked into that fairly quickly. But just like everybody else, we were completely blindsided, and it was a little kind of an Apollo 13 moment. We were trying to, piece things together and figure out what we could actually accomplish. But we did do a good bit of that. We did virtual rehearsals for a while with the chancel choir. Once we felt like we could safely gather a quartet in the sanctuary, very much distanced and masked, we would meet on Wednesday nights, and they would be mic'd, and everybody would follow us on YouTube Live or Facebook Live. So we did a lot of that. We only went back to rehearsing in person, still very, very carefully, in the summer.
Okay. And is that with both the youth choir and the adult?
We gathered together finally with the youth for the first time on Labor Day weekend, this past Labor Day, because we always have a retreat over Labor Day weekend. And we went back to our retreat site, and we were able to gather together again.
Mm-hmm. So did you find much reluctance on the part of people coming back to choir? Kind of what percentages did you have when you started up?
More reluctance on the part of the parents of the youth than on the part of adults in the chancel choir. We have a chancel choir, we have a women's choir, and we have a men's choir. And those choirs, we have a very, very high vaccination rate. And my choir president that just went out of office at the end of the summer is a doctor, and my new choir president is a doctor/scientist. So we have a lot of really good advice, and so we depended on them a lot. But the hesitancy was on the part of the parents of young people, and still quite hesitant. We are rehearsing on Sunday afternoon. As I said, we did go on retreat over Labor Day weekend, but we're being very, very careful. We don't do anything unmasked. At this moment, there's a mask mandate at the church. If you enter the building, you have to have a mask. Lots of hesitancy on the part of the congregation. Lots.
Yeah. I'm hearing that all over. So are you doing anything in particular to combat that, or are you basically just saying, yes, we understand, come back when you're ready?
Pretty much we're saying, yes, we understand, come back when you're ready. We are impressing on the world that we are being as careful as we possibly can. We are very fortunate in Houston to have the world's largest medical center just, about 1.5 miles from here, 2 miles. And so we have a lot of really, really good advice, and we may have some stuff available to us that maybe not I don't know if it's available in other parts of the country or not. We have a filtration system in the church that is the same as they have at MD Anderson, the big cancer hospital, that is supposed to help us with the virus in particular. We're trying to let everybody know that we're doing absolutely everything we can do to be safe.
Yeah. So talk a little about the struggles that you've maybe faced during this or as you're facing now?
Just like everybody else, we had no plan because this was completely out of the blue. Mark, I think you've read this book, and I haven't read it in a very long time, but it sprang to my memory when all this was unfolding. And that's the book Black Swan. And the premise of that book is, for centuries, they thought swans were white. There were no other colors of swan until they colonized Australia, and there were black swans. And a black swan is just a metaphor for when something just completely upends the common knowledge. And that's what COVID did for us. So as I said, we were sort of learning to fly the plane while we were flying, and in some ways building the plane while we were flying. I'm sure we made some wrong turns. I wouldn't want to do it again, although I've said if shutdown came again, I wouldn't want to do it, but I would know that we could do it. We have stayed strong throughout, and I think we could do it again. Again, I would not relish that,
Yeah.
But I think my biggest fear from the beginning was the kids. And as you know, Mark, they're my favorite thing. My youth choir is my very favorite thing. I'd rather be with them than anybody else. And the chancel choir knows that, and they're okay. Zoom just sucks the soul out of young people. It's so hard because for that group, they depend on their personalities so much, as they are navigating the socialization waters. And that's what makes it so fun to be with them, because they have so much personality, and you're seeing all of that blossom. And on Zoom, it's very, very, very hard. And so we worked really hard to keep them engaged, because we basically missed a whole year. There's like a pothole in our youth choir road where nothing really happened. Therefore, not only did I lose that year, but younger choir members, they don't have the experience of being in the choir. They don't know how to process. They don't know what it's like to sit up in front of the church and lead the congregation. They don't have any of that sort of knowledge of the tribe, So we are now, I won't say coping with that, because I hope we're doing it better than just coping. We are now realizing that that's the case, and we're figuring out what we have to do. They're going to be great, and the numbers are good, but young people were my biggest fear, because I didn't want to lose the youth choir that we've worked all of us have worked so hard for.
I think that brings up like a really good point that I'd like to kind of talk about a minute, and that is, for those who really find themselves in a rebuilding position, and you haven't been there for quite a while, but you did at the beginning, and now you're kind of back there. What are you thinking are key points to work on or to think about as you're rebuilding or bringing these choirs back?
I was thinking about this since you asked me to do this, and I was thinking about it particularly yesterday and this morning. And it's not false humility when I say I'm not the greatest musician in the world. And I have known that since college, when there were people in my class who could buy and sell me many times over in musically. But I'm not necessarily a person who has a clearly defined plan. I often stumble on and get lucky with plans. But I decided early on, I think this is why we're in good shape, and this is why I hope we'll continue to be in good shape. And this is what I would say to anybody who finds themselves in a place where they can't say they are in the strongest position. I said all along, we are going to do everything we can do to keep this community together so that we will have a choir or have choirs on the other side of this. And so we really, we focused all of our energy on community building. And yes, we made some music along the way. We created a huge amount of content for online. Some of it, I'm very proud of all of it. Some of it was lighthearted, some of it was serious, but we stayed engaged with those people as much as possible. We started a program called Curbside Convos, and I even had a friend actually had a sign made for the sides of my car that said Operation Curbside Convos, and I went to every choir member's driveway just to spend 5 minutes with them if they wanted it. There were some choir members who were not comfortable doing that, but I'd say probably 85% were. And so I would have FaceTime with them. I would say everything that we did that was focused on community building paid off many, many, many times over. And that wasn't brilliance on my part. That was just, okay, I think this is what we should do. Here's the decision, and we're going to make it a good decision. And that has carried us through, and we have choirs on the other side. So I would say to somebody who's in the midst of it still and trying to figure, a way to a stronger position. I had a friend who said early on, when virtual choirs were sort of becoming the thing, they said, "Where's the art in that?" And I wanted to say, boy, if you don't have a community, there's not going to be any art at all. So I feel super strongly about that.
Yeah. Has it changed anything about how you think about your repertoire?
For those of who have done virtual choirs, everybody knows this. I mean, you better pick something that people know that are comfortable with while we were shut down and doing those virtual choirs. But even when we came back, I've made a real effort for it to be sort of comfort food music that I know they love to sing, and music that I know they love. I don't want to spend what precious time we have in rehearsal as we recover learning tons and tons and tons of new notes. Now we are, obviously, as you know, but for the most part, I'm going back to those pieces that are really comforting to them, that they love and that they sing well. I want them to have some victories, easy victories.
You mentioned the book Black Swan, and that was something that you kind of went back to. I know you're a reader. Anything else that you'd point out that you found particularly helpful during this time, or that you're maybe reading now?
There's a poet and philosopher and spiritual writer named Mark Nepo. You probably know of Mark. And his stuff really resonates with me. One quote that I think about so much, when I read it, I thought he's going to have my picture in here. And this is not an exact quote. Sometimes we allow the thing in the way to become the way. And I'm very bad about that. If something happens, I can focus, especially if it's something that I feel is negative, I can really focus on that and lose sight of either ways around it or into it, to embrace it, or it really sort of becomes my focus. But Mark, I looked up some other quotes of his because I knew you were going to ask me that question. He says, "There are no wrong turns, only unexpected paths." Speaking of COVID, he said, "I keep looking for one more teacher, only to find that fish learn from the water and birds learn from the sky." I mean, those quotes can make me weep. And light is in both the broken bottle and the diamond.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Those are amazing quotes. So I would recommend Mark Nepo to anybody. He's really something.
One thing I had someone tell me when we were working on some business things is a really very smart CEO who said, watch your time and see how much you spend working in the business rather than working on the business. And I think that that's some things that you were talking about, that the things can get in the way. You can get so caught up in the day-to-day that you don't look at the big picture. And I think that was one thing that really happened to a lot of people during the pandemic, is that they had time to think about, well, where do we want to see this program go when we're done? When we come out of this,
Right. I said early on, I guess about 6 weeks in, because everybody was wringing their hands so much, including me. And I said, I feel like we have to stop bailing at some point and raise the sails. And wherever that's going to take us, whatever the sail's made out of, we just have to make some progress. And I will say, it's very important to me to have a group of people, a cadre of people with whom I can share my vision, and we can share each other's vision and be really vulnerable with each other and just lay it all out and say, this is so important to me. Will you help us achieve this? And that's been, gosh, I don't know where I would be without these people. I kind of do know where I would be. It would not be a good place.
Well, any final thoughts about things that you're really thinking about these days? Something that's on your mind a lot?
I've said to my choir before, to the chancel choir, I just want this choir to change the world. And the first time I said it, they laughed at me, of course. And I said, I've probably said this to you, Mark. I said, before you laugh wholeheartedly, if there's a meteor headed toward the earth, we don't have to blow it up. We just have to nudge it a little bit. And I think my choirs have changed the world. I think choirs all over the place are changing the world every day, because not because of giant headline making things, but because we nudge that meteor every time we get together and build our communities and strengthen that and make it possible for people to get through. I think we're changing the world.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for taking time to talk. This has been very, very helpful and very meaningful.
Anytime.
Okay. Well, we wish you the very best of luck in the days ahead.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Take care.
You too.